If someone were to ask you what you thought Satan's best weapon was, what would you say? Think about that for a few seconds. What do you think it is? I've asked this very question to a number of people and have gotten some very thoughtful answers, a wide variety of answers. But today we're going to focus in on one particular weapon that I see Satan using all the time. I know he's attacked me with this weapon on numerous occasions, and I bet he's done the same to you. So let's get grounded by looking at a couple of Bible verses that describe how Satan operates. 1 Peter 5:8 says that Satan prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking to devour. But we know that the lion isn't roaring when he's prowling. Quite the opposite. He's quiet, stealthy, low to the ground, hiding in the bushes, sneaking up on his prey. Satan does the same thing. He's clever, stealthy, sneaking without us noticing. 2 Corinthians 11:14 says, "No wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light." Satan doesn't march down the street in his red costume with horns and a tail and a pitchfork. No, he disguises himself as an angel of light. There are other verses we could look at, but these two give us a very good glimpse into how Satan attacks. He prowls around, setting up just the right time to attack, when we least expect it. And on top of that, he disguises himself as something good. Oh, he is clever, so very clever. So when we think about Satan operating this way, we should realize that this will require a great deal of diligence, constant attention on our part, so that we don't become deceived. When I think of a group of Christians being deceived, my mind goes to Revelation chapter 3, verses 14 through 18. "To the angel of the Lord in Laodicea write, these are the words of the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the ruler of God's creation. I know your deeds, that you're neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So because you're lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. You say, I'm rich, I've acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in the fire, so you can become rich, and white clothes to wear so that you can cover your shameful nakedness, and salve to put in your eyes so you can see." And you may be asking, well, where's the deception in that? The deception is found in verse 17. You say, I'm rich, I've acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. You see, they think they're just fine, in need of nothing. But Jesus says, not so. He says they're actually wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. They don't see themselves in any way close to how Jesus sees them. So they have clearly been deceived somehow. Listen to the first half of verse 14. I'm rich, I've acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. Now listen to the definition of the word comfortable. Free from financial worry, having an adequate standard of living, free from stress or fear. Listen to that again. Free from financial worry, having an adequate standard of living, free from stress or fear. That sounds an awful lot like, I'm rich, I've acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. From verse 17. I mean, wow, do you hear how strikingly similar that definition of being comfortable is to what Jesus says to the church in Laodicea? I mean, you could actually replace the words in verse 17 with the definition of comfortable and not change the meaning of that verse. Listen to the verse with those words inserted. For you say, I am free from financial worry, have an adequate standard of living, and am free from stress or fear. Or you could just insert the word comfortable. For you say, I am comfortable. It actually doesn't change the intent or meaning of that verse. But look at what Jesus says immediately after that, though. He uses that little three-letter word, but. But you do not realize. You say you're comfortable, but you do not realize that you're wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. I mean, why? Why don't they realize? Because they're comfortable. And that comfort has led them to believe that they are just fine, in need of nothing. Even though Jesus makes it clear in his words to them, that is not the case. So let's ask ourselves an important question. How comfortable are we? Comfortable enough to think we're just fine and don't need anything? Comfortable enough to not realize that Jesus sees us very differently than we see ourselves? Comfortable enough to think that there's no possible way that the words Jesus spoke to the church in Laodicea has anything to do with us? Comfortable enough to not realize that we are actually wretched or pitiful or poor or blind or naked? Or all of the above? You see, the church in Laodicea didn't realize. So, is it possible that our comfort has lulled us into not realizing our actual condition? So how comfortable are we actually? Well, by world standards, it's hard to be much more comfortable. The standard of living in the United States is extravagant compared to many places in the world. And we could quote all kinds of facts and figures showing just that. But let's instead funnel down a little bit more on this comfortability question. Let's narrow our question to this. How comfortable are we within our churches? Because you see, Jesus wasn't talking to the world in Revelation chapter 3. He was talking to the saints in his church. So is it possible that Satan is more than willing to use this comfort we enjoy to deceive us? Is it possible that our comfort is one of Satan's most clever weapons? Let's think about that a little bit. Can comfort really be a weapon? Teenagers often do all they can to make parents comfortable before they go do something stupid or dangerous. They use that comfort to lull the parents into not paying enough attention to what's really going on. Criminals work hard at blending in so that everyone is comfortable and not paying much attention. That's when they spring into action. The lion gets low in the grass and doesn't make any sound, so his prey will be comfortable and not realize he's there, and then he pounces. It's nice to be comfortable, but let's face it, comfort also breeds a lack of diligence. It usually brings about complacency and frequently leads to plain old laziness. Think about that. If you were Satan, isn't that exactly what you'd want from your victims? To be comfortable, complacent, lazy, going through the motions with minimal thought and diligence? That's easy pickings, as they say where I grew up. You know, it really is pretty easy to be comfortable within our churches. We actually work pretty hard at making it comfortable. We spend a huge portion of the money that's contributed just on providing nice, convenient, and comfortable buildings to meet in. And we make sure we hire a preacher that's well-spoken and let's face it, pretty entertaining when it gets right down to it. And more, we see churches adding full-blown bands to their services. Some have added lights and other special effects. It's pretty much like going to a concert. The list goes on, spending huge amounts of time and money on making it enjoyable, entertaining, comfortable. And how many congregations have you heard of that have different types of services at different times to fit the preferences of the members? We cater to what they like, to what makes them comfortable. So much for the scriptures that say we assemble to edify others. Our Church leaders jump through hoops to give everyone what they want, and instead of teaching us that we should be there to serve and build up others. A nice building to surround us, a well-spoken preacher to uplift us, a youth minister to make sure the kids enjoy themselves, lots of coffee available to make sure our coffee habit isn't interrupted, a song leader that leads the songs we like the most, or a whole other service for some members because they like different songs. A first service without musical instruments, and then a second service with musical instruments. A Sunday morning service for traditional folks. Saturday evening services for those that have plans on Sunday. I mean, the list goes on and on. All the things we do, the money we spend, the effort we put out, just to make sure church is comfortable and to our liking. Did you know that churches collect over $125 billion in donations each year in America? And that over 80% of those funds are spent on church staff salaries, church building costs, and internal member programs. Less than $1.05 is spent on evangelism programs or helping the poor, the homeless, or the hungry. So don't tell me we're not focused on our comfort. As they say, all you have to do is follow the money. Before you dismiss what I've just shared, because your church doesn't do all these things we've mentioned, let me encourage you not to do that. Just because your particular church doesn't do all of these things doesn't mean it isn't just as busy keeping people comfortable. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons some churches don't do certain things is because it would make some people uncomfortable. So regardless of your specific brand of church, we all need to take a look in the mirror, test ourselves to see just how much focus we are putting on being comfortable. But all this stuff we do, it works, right? After all, you've got to get people in the door somehow. And all these things we do or don't do are for that very good purpose, right? So all these things are justified, right? It's working, isn't it? There are church buildings all across the towns and cities in America. So all this stuff we do can be criticized, but obviously it's working, right? Except that it isn't. It isn't working now and hasn't been for a long time. Church affiliation and participation has been on a steady decline for over 60 years, with a quickening pace of decline since the turn of the century. Over 6 straight decades of church decline. Fewer people in America now believe in God than at any other time in our nation's history. More than 75% of our kids raised going to church on a regular basis leave the church within a year of graduating from high school. And research shows that a growing number of church attendees don't even know the basic tenets of their particular faith. But we're comfortable. So what are we to do? In a recent meeting of the saints that I serve God with, one of the young men was leading us in prayer. And in his prayer, he asked that God would help us be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I mean, it sounds a little odd until you think about it. And if I were to say it, I might word it like, God, help us be content with being uncomfortable. Help us realize that we don't grow when we're comfortable. Help us realize that atrophy sets in. Help us seek the discomfort that causes growth, that teaches patience, that builds wisdom, that strengthens compassion, that expands our faith, reliance, and devotion to God. I hope this doesn't sound too terrible, but I hope there's some uncomfortableness in your life and in your church. I hope God is challenging you to grow. I hope He's putting the things in your life that will force you to grow. And I hope your fellow Christians are admonishing one another on to good works, not just politely playing their role in the mutual admiration society that we've too often turned our churches into. I hope your leaders are expecting you to mature in your faith, preparing you for the works that God has prepared for you to do. I hope your time together with fellow saints is spent encouraging one another to be on guard for that prowling lion that's waiting in the bushes to devour you. Is your life comfortable? Is church comfortable? Are you sure Satan isn't using that to make you complacent, distracted, lazy, or ungrateful? Satan is clever, far more clever than we usually give him credit for. And in this place and time, one of his most clever weapons is our comfort. In Revelation 3:19, Jesus says, "Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline." I pray that our comfort won't cause us to ignore his love, his rebuke, and his discipline. And I guess, if I'm honest, I'll say, I hope I've made you a little uncomfortable today. Thanks for listening. God bless you on your journey.